So with that, I guess let's get to the first question here.
All right, first question is from Andrew, and he says, I'm a new member. I'm picking up the message that a common recommended strategy is to build a brand in an area of personal expertise. What would you say to someone who doesn't consider themselves an expert in anything? Wow.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure this is a really common one, so we get this from time to time for sure.
And if I remember correctly, his email went on to say, is like, this isn't just, false humility. I just happen to be, pretty good at a lot of different things, but, so, and yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel like they're in that position.
I just want to say really quickly that we do have a worksheet that helps you go through this in the Academy that asks a bunch of questions. And I guess we could, ask a couple of them if you want to start with some.
Well, and I guess I also want to point out that, in saying I'm not an expert at anything, maybe we should define really quickly expert. I mean, we're not talking you have to have a degree in something. We're not talking you have to have done something for 10 years. We're not, you just have to be either at the very least passionate enough about it to now dive in and learn a bunch and continually learn to in order to be able to create new content and at least know more about it than the average person. And, at the very least, if you have that, if there's a lot of things that you feel like you're pretty good at, or just okay at, well, pick one that maybe you'd like to be really good at, that you wouldn't mind diving in and, getting a couple books from Amazon or finding an expert in your area to learn a few things from, or do some research on the internet to pull some information together. Now, granted, you're probably not going to go and do a site on brain surgery in the next week or two. There's going to be a few exceptions, but
brain surgery for beginners. That'd be a video series.
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
That might actually go viral if you made those videos.
Yeah, no doubt.
So we want to manage some expectations there of what's necessary. It is something you want to be doing. I am a believer in, not just going and collecting a bunch of theory and then regurgitating it without actually diving in and doing it yourself some, or at least knowing some. I guess I shouldn't necessarily say doing yourself, or at least knowing somebody who is doing it that is working along with you, or things like that. It's like the college professor who's teaching engineering but hasn't been in the industry for 15 years. There's you can run into some problems, and that might depend on the niche too. But definitely check your expectations as to what's necessary about being an expert. But beyond that, yeah, you dive into the worksheet to help you decide which one is best for you. And that comes down to a number of factors, a few being, passion and analyzing the market for things like, well, do they have an irrational passion or an urgent pain that I can attend to, that I can help solve, that I can give them information about, and a few things like that.
Yeah, I very much agree. Again, to drive the point home on, it can just be something right now you would like to be an expert in, and you go out after it. That point I just wanted to really nail home so that, you don't get stuck with going, well, I'm good at a couple of things, but I wouldn't consider myself an expert. But, again, it doesn't have to be what you know right now. You can choose it. There's a lot of people that start with that. Like, I'm looking at a new market right now that I do have some knowledge in, but to be able to be an expert and to speak to the community as an expert, I'm studying everything I can on the subject and trying it out in my world and seeing what works and see what actually works for me. And soon enough, I'll be at a place where I believe I can speak to the community as an expert. So, I mean, sometimes it just comes from your desire to want to, your desire and maybe passion to want to know a lot about a subject and want to possibly teach it to other people.
All right, next question comes from Damien, and he asks, can you market yourself and your products while keeping your identity private? The reason being that some people still have day jobs. That's an excellent question. Another one that's very common. A lot of people run into that one. And a great example of this is somebody that we've interviewed on the podcast, and that is undercover lawyer Kurt. And Curtis is not his real name, but he is an expert in the legal stuff that he does, and he has a day job that could conflict with what Yeah, he doesn't want to find out what his bosses would think if they saw his site. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So he works under a pen name or a pseudonym, whatever you want to call it, an alias. He uses a different name. In fact, he goes as far as to, because he does audio content, he goes as far as to mask his voice using a piece of software that while he speaks, it changes the timbre of his voice a bit so that it sounds different. But yeah, for sure, you can use, there's nothing, especially if you get to the point where you're doing several different niches and you don't want confusion of your brand. And I mean, if I were to go right now and do a site about scuba, well, I might choose to use a different name over there just because, yeah, my name is associated so much with marketing and internet business and new media and things like that there might be a bit of a disconnect. And some people might be like, well, when they search for me and they're like, well, which is he actually an expert in? He's doing all these different things. So, in that case, it would be another case to maybe use an alias. So both for privacy, if you're wanting because of your job or just because you're a private person, or also for branding issues, if you want to keep things distinct, there's nothing wrong with using an alias. And of course, you might want to consult with a lawyer when it comes to things like doing business as a DBA is what we call it in the United States, and making sure that all you dot your I's and cross your T's when it comes to legally doing business under a different name.
Yeah, I mean, there's another couple of good examples of this. I have a friend that is kind of a big guy in the real estate market, and then one of his little side passions is urban survival. So he's got an entire course on urban survival. He trains with Navy SEALs and does all this stuff, learning about this urban survival stuff. Like he even had bounty hunters hunt him down to see if he could evade them in case something happens. And I mean, all these different things that he does. And of course, in the real estate market, where he's definitely more of a mainstream person, he's got his identity there, which is, I believe, that's where he uses who he really is. And then he uses an alias in the urban survival market, just like you said, there's no disconnect. Like they're going, oh, I want to learn how to do short sales from this guy, and then you see him in like full tactical gear on another page, with a big Bowie knife and face painted and, taking over some small building, or I don't know what they do. But anyway.
I see how you find your deals.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's another one. And then there's in the dating world, there was, somebody who had a certain name, and then, they started using their real name in internet marketing. I mean, there's a lot of people that do this, and us. I mean, when we started, ours wasn't the privacy of a job, but for instance, I was using my nickname of Sterling instead of my real name, simply because I didn't want my competitors to know it was me and start using the tips that I was giving against me. So, that was the specific reason that we started using our nicknames actually as our names on the show was because of that reason. And, I mean, there's lots of reasons why you might want to use a pen name or an alias. All right, so next question is from Deborah. What has been the best source of traffic for you guys? Has it been the podcast?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a...
Definitely, we get a lot of traffic from the podcast.
Yeah, yeah, not much money at all, definitely. And I mean, like, it's been so good that now we're looking at other ways of putting us out there through the use of the podcast, whether it be video and transcriptions and all these other things, because the podcast traffic has been so amazing. And, how much has the traffic cost us? Almost nothing. Just the production of the show cost, which is also almost nothing.
And now here is the principle that should be pulled from this. Some people might hear that and go, oh my gosh, I got to go start doing a podcast. And yes, maybe you should. But what the point here is that content marketing is where we have built our brand, amassed a strong following, and leverage them into customers because we've built up influence through our content. So whether you do blogging, whether you do audio, whether you do video, whether you do a combination of those, you definitely should be doing that because it's just consistent creation of quality, authoritative content that allows people to connect with us and get to know, like, and trust us